figure we don't need to recap the MVP winners and the Cy Young winners. It's cool. Hey, Tarek Skubal won the Cy Young. So did Chris Sale. And then Judge and Otani won the MVPs. The down ballot votes were pretty funny. But if you want to look at that, go to babywaa.com. It is the Just Baseball show for Monday, November 25th. Jack Aram, as always, it is presented by BetMGM. Non-tender deadline was on Friday. We want to talk about that. We also saw a trade finalized between Kansas City and Cincinnati, a trade that has been in the works for a week and a half, 2 weeks. Apparently, like every Royals piece of gear that Brady Singer owned made its way to a thrift store. Did you see that? Or like Goodwill? Did you
No,
see
I
that
didn't see
tweet?
that.
Yeah, it was like 6 hours before the trade was finalized. Somebody tweeted either Brady Singer just got traded or he's just getting rid of all of his Royal stuff at a local Goodwill. I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
That's a
But
pretty dramatic thing to do, I feel like.
I would think so. I'd want to keep a little bit of merch, but we're going to do that, and then we're going to talk about the National League West. How are you doing? Would you, if you got traded, would you ditch literally everything at a local Goodwill? I think I would just give it to my buddies.
Yeah, I would probably either give it to my buddies. I mean, I support donating to your local Goodwill, no doubt. But I just within like before the trade is even made public, I feel like you're almost going out of your way to do that immediately. It just wouldn't even cross my mind, I feel like. But maybe he really wanted to just give that back. I mean, it is cool for fans if you're roaming the Goodwill to have that. But yeah, that seemed like it was very much a plan for him to just eliminate all of the Royal stuff the second he got moved, I guess. But when we're going to talk about the trade, I think it's a great opportunity for him. Not that being in Kansas City wasn't, but I think this is another unique spot for him to potentially help a team compete for a playoff spot again.
Yeah, it wasn't a Goodwill, unfortunately. It was just a local thrift store. Richard Tater at Big Mac Dak tweeted, looks like Brady Singer is getting traded or he just purged all his old gear to a thrift store. And it's like a sweet Royal zip up quarter zip. And then there is so much baby blue and navy blue sitting on top of a cardboard box. It's insane. Like it does look like he ditched 100% of his Royals gear, but he's going to trade in the blue for the red. I do want to start with the notable non-tenders because that deadline was on Friday. I think it was what, 5 p.m.? No, 8 p.m. Eastern. Like, what a good time to do it. It's like, hey, 8 p.m. on a Friday. You're out with the fellas. Hey, we're not bringing you back. I'm sorry. You're just
Yeah.
a little bit too expensive for us.
Yeah, you're getting dinner with your family, and instead of making 5 million next year, you are either going to make the minimum or whatever everybody else is willing to pay you.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate because like that's the one area too, because the years of control, obviously, if you play well, you take care of your business. Teams are always going to tender you a contract, even if the arbitration gets a little expensive. But it is just another one of those examples where the teams just have so much of an advantage. Not only do they have the 6 years of control over you, if you play really well and you're in the first 3 years, and then your arbitration gets a little bit expensive by ARB one or ARB two, usually ARB two. I mean, if you don't sustain that extremely high level of play, the team can just say, back to square one for you, buddy." And that part makes it kind of tough. So, I understand how it can be kind of a frustrating spot, but and I think the financial side of it, a lot of people are probably surprised by a lot of these, and it's going to probably be the same answer of yes, in a vacuum, it's surprising that this player was preferred to be off the roster than on the roster because that player is most likely a net positive,
Yep.
but a net positive like a one WAR player at 10 million, so to speak, like they're not getting tendered a contract, especially in this market, and especially that many teams have payroll constraints, and I think we saw a few more casualties than normal this year because of that.
I think so. And, I think if this didn't exist, a lot of guys in Major League Baseball and a lot of people around Major League Baseball would change the old adage of it's so important getting to free agency to it's so important to get to arbitration. Like,
Yeah.
this is where getting to arbitration kind of sucks too, because, yeah, you're going to make more money than the league minimum, but, teams essentially have the right to fire you with or without cause until you hit 6 years. And that's when you essentially get the guaranteed money. So,
Yep.
again, it is so important to get to free agency, and every major leaguer's dream is to get to free agency, not just get to arbitration. But I think that's really important. The context of the price point is everything. And,
Yeah.
sometimes you see, examples of guys like I'm thinking Gavin Sheets in Chicago. Somebody's going to pay him the minimum. Like
Yeah.
he's probably a minimum player, but I'm thinking about Cody Bellinger a couple of years ago when he landed with the Cubs. He was going to be owed about 25, $30 million. Dodgers weren't going to do that because he wasn't a $25 million player at that point. Cubs gave him $25 million, and look how that worked out for him.
Exactly. And that's the interesting side of it is it's essentially like a 1 year deal every year
Yeah.
until your rookie deal is up. And yeah, of course it's more of a no-brainer when you're pre-arb, but once it gets into arb 2, arb 3, it's where teams have some interesting decisions. And if you come out of the gate really hot and earn yourself a ton of money in arb 1 and set yourself on a pace where you're going to be making a lot more than other players in arbitration, a la Cody Bellinger, if
Yeah.
you don't sustain that high level of play, you might end up just going back right down to the minimum. I think it's fair to have that uh, freedom as a team to not
Mhm.
fully be, tied to that, super high number if they're not sustaining the caliber of play. But there's something about going from, what you've built up to in each year of ARB back to square one potentially. That's tough. But I guess the other side of it would be, well, if you're worth more than the minimum, a team will be willing to pay you that. So usually the market ends up taking care of itself for the most part, but generally speaking, it does just, it's more of that reason why you got to sprint through the finish line of that rookie deal and get yourself paid in free agency.
Yeah. First one's a sad one. Pour one out for Peter. Cal Quantrill was non-tendered by the Colorado Rockies. Cal Quantrill is a lot better than a guy who is being taken off the roster because he would be a net negative. He is a
Yeah.
firm net positive. He was one of the bright spots in the rotation for the Rockies this year. Problem is, his ARB estimate was $9 million.
Yeah.
The Rockies just won't do that, especially with money committed to other arms that are coming off the shelf with major injuries like a Marquez and a Senzatella. It just didn't make sense for Cal. Cal's going to make $5 million somewhere, and he's going to be in a big league rotation.
Yeah. And I think the second half really, really hurt him too, in that case, too. First 19 starts of the year, he had a 4.13, and then final 10 starts of the season, he had a 6.85. So, I think also being a guy that actually throwing, like the fact that he throws pretty well at cores, though, made me feel like maybe it's worth it at 9 million. We talk about, like, I always use the Kyle Gibson and
Yeah,
Lance Lynn example because that's like the definition of back end of the rotation starter.
he
You
is
found a
that.
guy that survived in cores. That's one where I felt like at 9 million it was worth it, but I understand again just them wanting to go younger and just saying, hey, we'll just save the money in this case. Cal Quantrill's not going to be the difference between us being a playoff team or not, and Rocktober's again probably not going to come next year. Might as well not pay the 9 million.
Yeah, it's coming in 2026, and they are clearing a runway for Ariel Amador by non-tendering Brendan Rodgers. Rodgers, end of an era for them. I remember a long time ago when Trevor Story was viewed as the time buyer for Brendan Rodgers. It was Rodgers that went third overall, right? Because it was
Yep.
Dansby one, Bregman two, Brendan Rodgers three. Rodgers was due $5.5 million. At least that was the arbitration estimate for him. It doesn't make much sense for them to tender him a contract when they already backfilled his vacancy last year because of injury with Ariel Amador. You might as well just do that and give him the path on opening day, albeit he wasn't that good in the minor leagues this past year, but they want to give the prospect some run, and they can do that at, $5 million less.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit easier when Amador had the second half that he had, right? Where it was really rough. And for his standards, it definitely was a somewhat disappointing year. But to see him, finish as strong as he did and look like he's, on the fast track to getting a well-timed big league opportunity, not the rushed shit show that we saw,
Yeah.
during last year where they set Amador up for failure. Like it makes sense. He's going to be ready either early in the season or, a couple months in at the very latest. And, they might as well be focusing on going young at this point. I don't think Rodgers is going to have some magical, switch just flip at this point. I think you kind of know what you're going to get.
I think the one that took a lot of people by surprise was Jordan Romano because a lot of people remember the 2022 and 2023 Jordan Romano. And understandably so, this guy was considered one of the better closers in the American League. The problem is Jordan Romano was going to make just under $8 million. At least that was the arbitration estimate. And this is the guy that underwent arthroscopic surgery for a left elbow impingement or an elbow impingement this year, and he hardly threw. I feel like this is one of those where the Blue Jays were really concerned about the elbow, and they didn't view this as an $8 million risk that they were willing to take. They'd rather spend that money elsewhere.
Yeah, something was just off too, like when you saw him before the injury, where the fastball was getting destroyed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're hoping he comes back healthy. He was still even struggling at points a little bit, and then even the good Jordan Romano, like we always talked about, it, like how low was your heart rate even when he was good?
No, no, it was
Generally,
resting at 180 when he was on the mound.
exactly. So, he definitely has had some great flashes, but at that price point with the health issues and concerns, like, yeah, I'll try to find a free agent instead. And there's plenty of relievers out there.
Yeah, right elbow, not left elbow. I
Yeah.
apologize for that profusely. Speaking of left elbow, Patrick Sandoval was non-tendered by the Angels. He was going to be owed about $5.9 million. He had Tommy John surgery in June. He probably wasn't going to throw it all
Yeah.
this year. I understand guys like a Dustin May was tendered a contract, right? When Walker was going through arbitration with the Dodgers, he was tendered a contract because these guys are a step above, maybe 5 steps above Patrick Sandoval. And I think Patrick Sandoval is a consistently like good piece to have in a major league rotation. Good took a downturn at the beginning of this year, I think, but he has been reliably available until Tommy John. There's no point paying a guy $6 million for, you know, essentially no appearances when his clock is going to be up anyways.
Yeah, exactly. You'd just be paying him not to throw for you. Another unfortunate situation and how it works, but there's a good chance that he'll sign with somebody this offseason and it'll be one of those like backloaded 2 year deals, kind of similar thing that maybe you see with what the Brewers did with Brandon Woodruff. Obviously, not nearly as much money, but similar structure.
Yeah.
If a team really wants to lock him up now, or he waits and sees how it goes. But I'd imagine there could be like a backloaded 2 year deal out there for him. And hopefully he gets back and is 100% for 2026.
Yeah. Another head scratcher was Kyle Finnegan of the Washington Nationals.
Yeah.
And I know that it's going to elicit a reaction from people. What do you mean? Like Kyle Finnegan was an all-star. He saved 38 games this year. He had a 3.68 ERA. Okay. The peripherals were like not good. And that's one of the very few times that I'll bring up the peripherals. And also, are you going to pay that guy $8.6 million when you're in the Nat situation? Like, hell
Hell no.
no. I
No.
don't blame Mike Rizzo one bit for this. I understand, oh, like non tendering an all star sucks. Okay. It's $8.5 million for a reliever that might have a 4.5 next year.
And evidently, I mean, you're not making this move unless there was a minimal trade market for him at the deadline
Yeah.
because they didn't move him then, right? And then you would have tendered him a contract if you thought you could move him for literally anything. Final 20 appearances of the year, he had a 6.3 ERA, only struck out 16% of batters, 32 hits in 20 innings. The velo was still there too, which is almost more concerning.
Yeah.
So it didn't look good for Finnegan down the stretch, and that's how it is with relievers, right? Like these guys that pop up, it's just a hot little streak, and sometimes they're not really as good as the numbers may suggest, and that might unfortunately be the case with Finnegan, who in that stretch, by the way, opponents hit 368,
Dude.
433, 506 against him in those final 20 appearances of the year, and it doesn't really get any better if you extrapolate that further, to be honest. So unfortunately, yeah, tough finish to the year, but he is a guy that like obviously throws hard and has some interesting stuff. Go to a different situation, team tinkers with your stuff a little bit. Maybe he recaptures that. And I think that's very possible.
For 3.5, not 8.5. So
Exactly. For a fraction of it.
yeah. Another Nat, Tanner Rainey. Tanner Rainey hasn't, been available and like good and available since 2022. He made one appearance in 23. And this year he made 50 appearances, but had a 4.76. I just thought this one was interesting because Rainey was the last member of the 2019 World Series winners that was on the roster. So now the Washington Nationals have a grand total of 0 players from that World Series winner in 2019. It's
That's
five
crazy.
years ago. That's not a long
Not,
time.
it's not that long ago. That is wild. What was Rainey projected to be owed?
Rainey, that's a good question.
Because the reason why I ask is this one was probably as surprising as any. Final 20 appearances of the year, he pitched with a 2.25 ERA in 20 innings, struck out 21 in that span, only walked seven. Um, I thought that was a little bit more surprising, and he's had some great stretches, through his career when healthy. Um, that was a bit more surprising to me than maybe some of the others, to considering that the fact that he was actually pretty good at missing bats down the stretch. Opponents hit 194 in those final 20 appearances.
Estimate was 1.9.
I don't
So
understand.
I'd probably pay him 1.9, honestly, just for sentimental value alone. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you keep a guy like Kyle Hendricks, he spent a lot of time on that Cubs roster because he was the last one left,
Yep.
one standing from that 2016 team. And We're talking about a team that won 3 years later that is fresh out of members of that roster that won the World Series, which is crazy. Howie Kendrick, shout out you. Two more guys. Austin Hayes was non-tendered by the Philadelphia Phillies. Okay, get it. Hayes was owed, I think it's going to be about $6 million in arbitration if this went through. He came over at the deadline from Baltimore, hamstring strain, came back, immediately hit with a kidney infection. Like it
Yeah.
was a brutal stretch for him. I think it was like 50 plate appearances or something that he had with Philly, and it was fine. It was good, not great, but I don't know. Like maybe they just don't feel like he was healthy enough, and at the price point, they feel like they can pay to improve that position. It just felt like a roster crunch type move,
Yeah,
non-tendering
exactly.
Hayes.
I was gonna say it seems like all indications are they're going to be quite busy, and in that case, you want that roster flexibility. They may want to make a Rule 5 pick. Yeah, there's a lot of wrinkles to that. So yeah, I think they just felt like the roster spot was more valuable used elsewhere.
Last but not least, Griffin Canning was non-tendered by
Yeah,
the Atlanta Braves, which makes this the dump of all dumps in
yeah.
terms of Jorge Soler's salary. It was a one-for-one swap. The Angels take on the entirety of Soler's remaining money for Griffin Canning, who will not throw a pitch for the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I think part of it was just taking, I guess, the league minimum offsetting. Not even that though. You don't save any money in that regard. I guess really it probably was one of those scenarios where the Braves were like, there's a chance we'll want to keep Canning, but depending on how some things go over the next few weeks, we'll decide. And then maybe some arms were not protected that they thought would be protected in the Rule 5, and they said, you know what, we'd rather use this opportunity to go snag a Rule 5 arm or something.
Yeah.
But it was probably made in the event that maybe they'd want to hold on to him, and now I think they just figured there's some better options out there. So yes, it was as clear of a salary dump as imaginable.
Yeah. So those were the guys, those were the notable guys that were non-tendered. I do want to talk about something sexier now, and that is that Jonathan India for Brady Singer trade. So Brady Singer goes from Kansas City to Cincinnati for Jonathan India and Joey Weimer. Feel bad for Joey Weimer, who has
Yeah,
now bounced to his third organization in 4 months, right? Because
yeah,
he
just
was
about.
Milwaukee, then Cincinnati, and now Kansas City. I hope Weimer can kind of regain that form that made him a very intriguing piece in 2023 and even before that. And he'll have a chance in a hitter friendly park in Omaha to get his
Mhm.
feet back under him. And I don't know how competitive that Royals outfield is going to be. It wasn't very last year. So there could be an opportunity to slide back in.
I mean, I think he's a great iron to just have in the fire because you know that he's got the power speed combination. He can play defense. Like you get Kyle Isbell out there who was getting a lot of run. Just being able to throw another player into the fold and
Yeah.
hope it clicks. He's toolsy. That was on top of a deal that I think many saw as an even swap, anyways. I think it's good insurance there.
You want to start with the Singer fit or you want to start with the India fit?
Um, I'll start with the India side because there was actually something interesting that I want to mention before I forgot.
Was
I
it
guess
was it
on the
Vinny
India front.
Pasquantino's tweet saying "I love Michael Massey" and it was a photo of them at a wedding?
No, that's pretty funny though.
Yeah, that
He's
is good.
well timed.
Yeah,
Yeah. What do you think about that side of it? Because is it India just continuing to play second base? Do they move Massey to third potentially and move Michael Franco? Like there could be other wrinkles there. Like I don't see this as like a. I said Michael Franco,
yeah,
didn't I?
yeah.
Michael Garcia. That's good.
That's
That's
so
good.
funny.
Oh, Michael Franco. Like what could have been?
Get your head out
Yeah,
of
Michael
2015,
Garcia.
man.
Like I don't know, like I never really saw this as like reps are going to be taken away from Massey. I figured they just find a way. No,
I think so. Honestly, like I kind of think India's going to get a lot of DH reps. Is that crazy of me to think?
no, I don't think so. I think this was just an opportunity to bring another bat into the fold and at a low cost where it also frees them up financially. I don't know if you have that in front of you, but I think Brady Singer is going to be making a fair amount more this year by the projections. But the first thing that I thought of, and I'm sure the first thing that a lot of people are probably thinking of is, well, Jonathan India has not been great away from Cincinnati, right? Like he's very clearly a park dependent player where he's fringy power. So in a place where it's quite easy to hit the ball out, that power is going to play up to slightly above average. But in places where the ball doesn't fly, the power is going to be sapped maybe disproportionately than to other hitters.
Yeah.
But that's why I think this is actually a great fit of a trade. Is he goes from a team that I think their home ballpark was fourth or third by MLB Park Factor, and then Kaufman is legitimately right behind them. So this is still a place where, and we heard so much this year about Kansas City's home road splits, right? All of
Yeah.
these players, how dramatically more offensively productive they were, at home versus on the road, specifically Bobby Witt. Not as much from a home run perspective, but from an extra base hit and just run perspective, there clearly is a good place to hit. And if you'll get Park Factor on Baseball Savant, Coors Field's number one, Fenway Park two, Great American Ballpark number three, and Kauffman number four. And it's 105 Park Factor to 104 at Kauffman. So you're hoping that that translates and continues to, kind of be the same there. I don't think it's quite as good of a place to hit in terms of the power side of things, obviously, but clearly it seems to even out one way or another. And I think that does probably provide a little bit more optimism
Yeah.
that, Jonathan India can be the same player that he has been in Cincinnati, which is probably a home road splits guy. Okay, that's fine. The whole team is, but
Yeah.
it is kind of further leaning into that dramatic home road split thing. That said, Jonathan India is coming off the best season that he has had since his rookie year, so
Yeah.
I think it is a good opportunity to still probably buy relatively low
Yeah.
here and free up some money because we'll get to the Royal side, but like they're gonna go get a starter anyways.
Yeah. So the money difference is about $3 million, maybe $3.5 million. India's owed 5.45 this year. They bypassed Cincinnati, bypassed 2 years of arbitration. So it was 3.8 this past year and then 5.45 this coming year. 2026 is ARB3. Then he's off the books after the 26 season. Brady Singer is estimated about $8.8 million. I think I have this right here. Yeah, Singer 8.8 million. He's at 4 years and 156 days. India is 4 years flat. A quirk that I want to mention before I forget, these two were lined up perfectly at the University of Florida. Apparently, they're like still really good friends.
That's
Like their
cool.
3 years at Florida were 16, 17, and 18. So I'm sure the text was hilarious. It was like, oh, we're getting traded for each other. Like, I'll see you
Yeah.
on the golf course next week.
What do I need to know? Like,
Right?
yeah, that is a pretty wild thing. I can't imagine there's been many instances, if any at all, where two college teammates have been traded essentially almost straight up for each other.
And same draft year too, man. Like
Yeah.
I understand if it's like, oh, one guy's 2 years older than the other. Like they came in the same recruiting class. They were both first round picks in 2018. Like they lined up every step of the way, and now they're getting moved for each other. I'm with you. Like I think this is lineup flexibility. Kansas City obviously had a lineup depth problem at points because how many times did we say on this show that they were relying on Bobby Witt Jr. and that was literally it? They
Yeah.
have the opportunity to add another bat to the fold. And I'm with you. Like they're going to pay somebody. I think it's easier to find a 2 year deal for a starting pitcher than a 2 year deal on a serviceable outfielder or a guy that can DH. Because like Reese Hoskins cost a lot of money. You can find a starting pitcher for way cheaper than that.
Yeah. Exactly. I just keep thinking like, does Massey get some looks at third now and then maybe? Is that something that he
Right.
can do? Or is it just mostly leaning into India in that DH spot and, just see how things go? Like that's gonna be a fun just wrinkle and how they're gonna approach the roster because we did see that Garcia, reportedly was, made available in
Yeah.
trade conversations. And that to me maybe says like, hey, they're kind of exploring the way that maybe they can allocate this infield.
Where do you think his value lies?
I don't know. That's not the kind of player that I think you specifically say, "Hey, this guy's available." That was kind of surprising to me, Garcia. Like, I just don't think he's very good, unfortunately.
Peter and I had a conversation in like August, and he was like, "I think Michael Garcia is good." I was like, "Do you believe that?" Like, I don't
That was
think
a
he's
group
good.
thing. That was a weird baseball community group thing, and a lot of smart people. Like a
Yeah,
lot of, I think he must have met some like batted ball markers and things that people like, and I just, he just has never been that good.
yeah. I like he lacks impact entirely. He doesn't walk. Like there's really not much going on here
He's
except
a
for the stolen
great,
base, to be honest.
and he can play some decent. Like he's a great bench player. He could be that on Mundo Sosa
Sure,
type, I guess. Like maybe, but
sure.
even then, I think I'd still take Sosa.
It was funny. Like I kind of laid out why I didn't think Michael Garcia was good, and Peter was like, "Okay, you're right. Like
Yeah, you
nothing's
know
good." I
what?
was like, I
That makes
appreciate the
sense.
white flag. So I like that. The Singer side in Cincinnati. I do think this is a perfect fit. And this is the fit that we were talking about with Lodolo when he was coming up, man. You want a sinker ball guy in Great American Ballpark. Like he pitches the way the Reds would want a guy to pitch at Great
Mhm.
American. Brady Singer leans into the sinker. And
Yep.
like the average launch angle against him is pretty damn low. I think it was 80th percentile or something in ground ball rate among qualified pitchers this year, or among all pitchers this year. Like he's going to get ground balls ad nauseum in Great American Ballpark. And that's what you need behind a guy like a Hunter Green. And Green has curbed the home run problem enough to be an ace for Cincinnati. But there are plenty of other guys. Like there's really nobody else in that rotation that is going to lean into the sinker like Brady Singer is. And it's good to test that.
Yeah, I would say just right louder, right? And like
Yeah,
that's
that's
it.
about it.
That's really it. And so like you have a guy here that is proven to do it, right? And I know Louder looked awesome, but you can't put all your eggs in a rookie starter's basket, especially the fact that like the peripherals pointing towards, Rhett definitely having a fortunate stretch, even though I think he's going to be a good big league arm for some time.
Yeah.
Now I love the fit for a lot of reasons. We talked about if everyone's healthy, oh yeah, the Reds rotation can be fun. But if you're counting on Nick Lodolo to be healthy at this point, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you're counting on Andrew Abbott to be able to sprint through the finish line of 180 innings, I think you're probably putting yourself in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Brady Singer, I think you can count on giving you 150 plus innings, and you're hoping it's more to the high threes than the mid fours in the ERA department, but I think there's a lot of reason to believe that it can continue to be in the high threes. But the thing is even if it's towards the four marker, like this is a guy that you're not expecting to be at the front of your rotation. This is just another guy that you can look at every fifth day and say, hey, we know our offense is pretty good. If we hit the way we're supposed to, we got a good chance to win every single time he's on the mound. And, I think that's what they needed more of. And there was a lot of times through the season where it was kind of plug and play and
Yeah.
you didn't feel great about the depth maybe that they had starting pitching wise. It got thin quick. And I think Singer is the perfect piece to just be able to, make you feel good about 1 through 5, at least giving you a shot to win every fifth day.
Yeah. Speaking of the innings totals, by the way, 2017 at Florida, 126 innings and 19 starts. 2018 at Florida, 113 innings and 17 starts. 2019, first year of Pro Bowl, 148 innings in the minor leagues. 2020, COVID. 2021, 128 innings in the big leagues, added an additional 5 in the minor leagues. 2022, 153 innings. 2023, 160 innings. 2024, 179 and two-thirds innings.
And you go to the Red side of things this past year.
They haven't had that.
Hunter Green led the way with 150 innings, missed some time at the end of the year. Nick Martinez, in his age 33 season, who you're thrilled to have back, was number 2 at 142 innings. And then there was Andrew Abbott, who ended up missing some time anyways, too, only made 25 starts, through 138 innings. And then Nick Lodolo somehow threw 115. It felt like less than that. So, but then you dip off from there. Just having another guy that you can, I won't Sharpie any starting pitcher in if I were a general manager,
Yeah.
but another guy that you can pencil in a little bit more firmly for 130, 140, 150 plus, I think really sets your team up to sustain the marathon that is 162. And I feel like that's been the big problem for the Reds. Not always just the talent that they have or don't have. It's kind of they were not really built to handle the duration of a season and handle, taking a couple hits like every team is going to end up taking, especially to the pitching staff.
For the life of me, I can't find where I found this note, but Brady Singer would have led the Reds in innings pitched each of the last 3 seasons. So to add
Oh
that
wow, yeah,
9,
that doesn't surprise me at all. Honestly, I should have had a stat like that ready, but I'm glad you mentioned that because like it totally checks out.
yeah, like nobody hit 150 innings in 2022, in 2023, or in 24. Hunter Green was at what, 150 exactly, or 150 something, and Singer was 25 innings clear of that. So you get reliability there when our whole thing going to 24 was you have 7 guys that might work out. We'll see if 5 of them do. And the answer was no, unfortunately.
And John India was a luxury at that point. It was great to see him.
Surplus,
And I
man.
know he's a fan favorite, great guy in Cincinnati who I know will get an ovation every single time he goes back and handled the trade conversations over the last multiple years. I think pretty well overall, considering how often they were
He was a
floated and how
sitting
long.
duck after he won Rookie of the Year, man.
Yeah, pretty terrible. And floating positional moves, all that good stuff. So it's just one of those spots though where with Matt McClain healthy, you just look at the infield and especially Christian Encarnacion Strand as well. Like, where does John India really fit into this situation? Anyways, you're able to trade that in essentially for a starting pitcher that on the open market would have cost you a lot more. I think it's a great spot to be.
No doubt. NL West in a moment. Before that, quick break. Last division, best division that we got to go over. I think the best division in baseball this year. There was one run. It was the Rockies, but the Rockies are our favorite team here on the Just Baseball show. Not Peters. I think us two, our favorite team. But this was a gauntlet at points this year. And again, final division. We are going to go through. I'll give you a team OPS, runs scored, starter ERA, bullpen ERA, and at the end, we'll give you a letter grade on how that season went. Start with the world champs, the LA Dodgers. They were 98 and 64. They obviously won the World Series in 5 games against the Yankees. They were first in team OPS. They were second in runs scored. They were 19th in starter ERA. They were fourth in bullpen ERA. Their only shortcoming this year was because of the worst case of Murphy's Law I have ever seen.
I've never seen a pitching staff get dismantled. This was like Ray's level of dismantling, where like you have the two playoff rotations essentially. How many starting pitch? Or so let me start with this. Do you know who led the Dodgers in innings pitched this year?
Was it Stone?
Yes. How many do you think it was?
110.
140.
Oh
So
wow, good for Gavin
yeah,
Stone, man.
like Gavin Stone out for a year too.
Yeah,
Like the guy
sure.
that was not available at the end of the season, got hurt, is out for a long time now. Like that is the guy who led you in innings. And then number two, the only other guy with triple digit innings, Tyler Glass now hurt, not available. So you had the two guys that threw the most innings for you, actually the three, third most innings, by the way, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who, also ended up being, huge for them down the stretch, but all three missed a significant amount of time or the end of the season. And those
Yeah.
were your three, top innings eaters, so to speak. One last trivia question. There's no way you get this. Who was fourth? And this has nothing to do with you. That wasn't hate. That's just there's no way. I don't expect anybody in the audience aside from like diehard Dodgers fans to guess this. Who was fourth in innings pitched for the Dodgers this year?
Can I give you a weird shout? Let me go like Evan Phillips.
It's not a bad guess. He's a little bit down there though, but like not that far off. He's like 20, 30, 36 innings below this guy, or a little bit less than that.
Man, I mean, it wasn't Bobby. Like Bobby didn't pitch enough for that.
Nope.
Uh Knack?
Nope. He was close, but no. That would have
Who?
been my guess. What was the
No,
next one?
who? I have no
Oh,
idea.
James Paxton.
Oh, yeah, no chance.
James Paxton was
No chance.
fourth on this team in innings pitched. I understand that this was the Avengers and the lineup is ridiculous, but like this was not even the, I would say, 20th percentile outcome of what you would have expected from this rotation.
No, and you think
And
about like who underperformed. So like the unavailable thing's a huge conversation, right? Like Emmett Sheehan, unavailable. River Ryan, for the most part, unavailable. He looked really good in his first, 3 starts, but then he went down. Tommy John surgery. Clayton Kershaw, unavailable. Tony Gonsolin, unavailable. Dustin May, unavailable. Think about who underperformed. Bobby Miller, Walker Bueller. Like there were several guys that underperformed expectations. Even a prospect that came up, like I thought Robleski was going to be better than he was.
yeah, and he wasn't very good. Like Landon Knack, like he was great when they needed him, but even then it wasn't, I think, as consistent enough for him to be able to eat the innings that they probably needed. And then I thought there were some good things down the stretch, but yeah, I mean it was a really fascinating spot for that team to be in. And I really do think it was like the 20th percentile outcome of the rotation, considering Yamamoto, you were expecting to throw closer to double that. You would have expected Glass now to be available, but I could understand that one. Stone was a great scenario, but as you mentioned, like a lot of guys that either underperformed or were completely hurt. So pretty remarkable that they still won the World Series.
I also I keep making this mistake. I keep forgetting Shohei Ohtani when I mention unavailable pitchers.
Yeah, there you go too. Yeah, it's just another pitcher that, like, if you think about, at least you knew he was going to be unavailable, and that's why I think we keep like forgetting that one. But
Right.
yeah, I mean it's just remarkable.
It's wild, man. I mean, this offense was once you got to the postseason, this offense was flawless. I think after the deadline, this offense was pretty flawless. Like Tommy Edman was a huge get. And
Huge.
I don't think people appreciated that in the regular season as much as they should have. And people started to appreciate that in the postseason. And of course, like he was the NLCS MVP. This guy was huge during the postseason. But Andy Pages coming up looking, as solid as he was. It's not like he grabbed the center field spot and, never let go. He was optioned at one point, but Yeah, James Outman suck at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
The fact that you can replace him with Pages by the end of the year or by mid-season and net positive there is a huge, huge thing, especially after Outman's 2023.
Especially with Chris Taylor just being unplayable as
Yeah,
well. I mean, you really didn't have much of a contingency plan other than Andy Pages off of shoulder surgery, trying to, really get it going. And he did in the first half, had an understandable adjustment period, and then still ended up giving them some quality ABs in the playoffs and beyond that. And I think should be a guy that they definitely count on moving forward at the very least to destroy lefties. So I mean, it was a huge spot for Pages to step up and be above replacement level.
this was very Miami Heat in the early 2010s. Like this season, and I made the Dodgers or the NBA team of Major League Baseball comp when they were making their way through the postseason. I do firmly feel that way because the Miami Heat were running out Norris Cole and Mario Chalmers, and who were the centers on those teams? Like, do you
Uh,
remember?
we had some crazy centers on those teams,
Yeah, dude.
dude.
Like, who were the bench players? Throw me some weird names from those early 2010s Heat teams.
Well, they had Zildrunas Ilgauskas one year.
Washed
He
at
was
that
one of the
point.
only guys that didn't win it. But you had like Eddie House coming off the bench. They had Jerry Stackhouse coming off the bench. Those weren't some of the best players, but they're just
Juwan
like some
Howard. Yeah.
Jawan Howard at 8,000 years old. I mean, they had some random guys getting into the game there. Mike Bibby was on one of those teams for a little bit. Like
Dude,
it was a wild stretch. I think they gave Greg Oden a shot.
yeah.
I mean, Ronnie Turioff got a ring.
My
There were
point,
some players on those teams.
you're making my point, man. Like, they are running out
Oh,
randos
can't
here.
forget
Like,
Birdman either.
yeah, Birdman, Chris
He was one of
Anderson.
the
I
best
loved he.
options they had.
Blue guy. I mean, you're furthering my point because this proves that stars win championships. Like you have to pay stars in order to win. And they won this because of stars. We were having the conversation up until the deadline. The bottom half of the lineup needs to get better. The bottom half of the lineup needs to get better. And what happens? At the end of the day, you've got LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. You have
Yeah.
Otani, Betts, and Freeman and Will Smith, and they're just going to carry you to the World Series, and they win it and they got help from Yamamoto, who had training wheels on. Let's not forget that this guy had training wheels on coming off of that injury in the postseason. He was not fully unleashed in any of those starts. He just made the most of his starts. Stars won this championship.
Yeah. Who was 34-year-old Rashard Lewis on this Dodgers team?
Ooh, Miggy Rowe?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Mickey Rowe was awesome. And I want to give him his flowers too. Like, I mean, I know he had some social media situations, and
Right. Yeah.
him and Jazz thing is just kind of it
Well,
got
and the
it
base
got a little
hair
lame
didn't
on
look
both
good.
ends, but I would say Rojas is at the end when you won it all. Like, dude, you won it all. Like, it's all good.
Right.
But I mean, it was one of Rojas's best seasons of his career,
Yep.
and on the best team that won it all. I mean, going from a player that the Marlins are just like, yeah, we'll dump you off, and to be contributing pretty significantly. And I think especially with the struggles of Gavin Lux, like he picked up Gavin Lux. I know Lux ended up turning in a fine year in terms of being above replacement level, but I think Miguel Rojas is very forgotten and very much that NBA off the bench kind of player that, I think only the diehard fans would probably really say like, oh, we would have been we would have had a hole. We might have still won it all, but it
Yep.
would have looked a lot shakier and we would have been trying to paste things together a little bit more if we didn't have him fill in the role like he did.
For sure. I think we're at a consensus. It's an A plus because they won the World Series, and like
Yeah, and,
it's
and
even
what they
further.
overcame. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's even further an A plus because of the situation pitching wise. Like,
We
wow.
didn't even mention Kyle Hurt, who came up, looked like he could eat innings at least two, and
Yeah.
then got hurt. Emmett Sheehan, like I thought he'd be available, and
TJ.
obviously, well, not I didn't think he'd be available. He got Tommy John early in the year, but that was a guy that I thought would be a breakout
Yep.
potentially this year as well. So it is pretty wild. Absolutely an A plus, and I mean, you won the World Series, but also like they did it in a fashion where you can't be like, oh, super team, blah blah blah. Like, I mean, there's other teams that could have matched them. Not maybe not from a lineup talent perspective, but
Yeah.
you could have definitely had a better starting pitching situation.
For sure. And like Bobby, that still makes me scratch my head. I
Yep.
don't know what happened there. And I'm hoping that 25 is a little bit better from there. So my last Dodger thing for you, heavy is the head that wears the crown, obviously.
Yep.
How do they get better? How do they retain this status? How do they put their best foot forward to win back-to-back World Series? Is it Max Fried? Is it bringing Flaherty back. Like, I don't know what it looks like.
I think up the middle is a huge priority, right? I mean, you gotta have something better going on. And I know what's the official of the on record plan for Mookie at this point is bring him back to second base.
Yeah, I think that was what
I'm trying
Brandon
to keep
Gomes
up.
said.
So I'll confuse myself if I think too much about it because we've spun around so many times on this. But you know, Gavin Lux just can't be playing every day. I hate to single out one spot, but Gavin Lux can't be playing every day, and they need another outfielder. Probably brought into the fold there, and in one of the corners, you probably just can't be counting on James Outman to fill a pretty consistent role.
I don't think so. Maybe Dalton Rushing in left. Like, obviously, they just gave Will Smith a 10-year deal. We'll see what happens on that front. I just saw this headline from Dodgers Nation. Miguel Rojas can't wait to help Mookie Betts thrive in Dodgers infield next year.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think it's going to be you, Mickey. I think it's going to be Willie Adames. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, and that they'll address, and then I think you look at the rotation situation. If everybody's healthy, they're in a pretty good spot. But I think you got to add another like depth arm, innings eat or something, because when I list you all of these names, you can you can pretty much point out the same thing with all of them, or at least say that you have some concern. Yamamoto, Glasnow, Otani, Gonsolin, Bobby Miller, Dustin May.
Yep.
There's a lot of wrinkles there, and reasons to just say, hey, just go get like an innings eater that just won't get shellacked every fifth day out there, because I think they need some guys that they can feel confident will be available.
And they can pay 80 million for those type of guys. Like, they
Yeah,
really can.
no
So
doubt,
we'll
no
see
doubt.
how they want to attack that. But yeah, firmly an A+ season for the LA Dodgers. San Diego Padres may not be far behind. I know San Diego fell to them in the DS, but we talked about that. That was essentially the World Series, Dodgers Padres, and that felt like what we wanted from Paul and Tyson. That sucked, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't think
I
we
mean,
ever addressed that, but
shocker,
yeah,
shocker.
stunned that sucked. The San Diego Padres were 93 and 69 in the regular season. They were sixth in team OPS. They were eighth in runs scored, 13th in starter ERA, and 11th in bullpen ERA. The 11th in bullpen ERA was a little deceiving to me because I viewed them as like that super pen. I viewed them as a top five
Hmm.
bullpen in all of baseball. Starter ERA too, 13th was a little deceiving to me as well. And I know that they were without Yu Darvish for a while and Musgrove. That was finicky. I I think there were a lot of guys that could be considered the team MVP of the San Diego Padres this year. I think Merrill is the right answer, but I want to give Michael King his flowers too.
Yep. Yep, because Michael King I mean, he was their most consistent starter, and they went out and got Dylan Cease to be the ace, and Dylan Cease was really good, no doubt about it. But when you needed somebody to match zeros from an ace on the other side, Michael King was the guy that was doing that more often than not. And I mean, a 2.95 ERA over 173 and two-thirds innings is just ridiculous stuff. So Cease held up his end of the bargain, but I think what King provided was massive, because it's a similar conversation with almost every team. But Yu Darvish dealing with the personal situation, only throwing 81 and two-thirds innings. They didn't have anybody else go 100 innings if Matt Waldron didn't step up. And I know he hit a wall at the end of the year, but Matt Waldron ate a lot of starts that would have probably gone to either Johnny Brito or like I don't even know. I
Randy
don't know who they would have
Vasquez.
went.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Martin Perez. I don't know. But regardless, it ended up being a better situation for a lot of it until that knuckleball stopped knuckling the same way, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, to give him 146 and two-thirds innings at a sub five, again, low bar, but they needed somebody to go out there. I think was very helpful.
Right. I I like that you bring up Waldron's presence because it did kind of feel like they had three starters at some points where it was Cease, King, Waldron, and you were just figuring it out elsewhere. Their bullpen was a saving grace. And I don't care what the bullpen ERA rank is for these guys. I mean, that was built like a different beast, especially after the deadline where you had Adam and Tanner Scott in there, Robert Suarez, king of the heater. Estrada's breakout was
Yeah,
huge. And I know
huge.
that you really liked Jeremiah Estrada when he was a Cubs prospect. I liked Estrada when he was a Cubs prospect, but him finding this weird chitter that he had, like, come on
Chitter.
now. And
Yeah.
dude, like, I thought Yuki Matsui was incredibly underappreciated this year, to be honest.
He finished really strong, I think, from in terms of a missing bats perspective. He's one of the guys that I think is actually going to take a big step forward this coming season. But I think you got to give a lot of credit to AJ Preller addressing the bullpen too, because it wasn't just okay. Yeah, you can go get Tanner Scott, who was good for them. But getting Brian Hoeing thrown into that deal as well. Brian Hoeing gave them 23 and 2/3 innings of a 1.52 ERA.
Yeah,
Jason Adam, they used him a lot,
a
and he
lot.
gave them 26 and 2/3 of a 1.01 ERA. Like these were moves that I think really helped them and made that bullpen, what we thought it would be down the stretch of the season.
Yeah. I want to give you your flowers on Merrill officially because although he didn't win Rookie of the Year, he's deserving in any other season. Um, this guy was put into a situation where I don't think anybody was anticipating he would be as successful as he was from the jump. And I remember we talked about it on the call up in spring training, like February. Merrill could make some sense in left, and they tried him in left, and like it looked decent in spring training. I wasn't thinking center when he was in South Korea. I wasn't thinking center for 150 games and putting up as good of a year as he did.
I didn't think he'd be that good in center. I definitely thought he could play a good outfield though. I was very much fortunate to be out in Arizona and see him getting some work in early, seeing him get some balls in the spring training games that I was watching, and then also just we've seen the just ridiculously natural ability that he has to play the game of baseball. Like going back to the fall league, watching him get his work in defensively at short, and how quickly he just seems to catch on to things. You saw the offensive adjustments he continued to make as the year progressed. Like, there's a guy that I'll just bet on every day of the week. Yeah, it's just a very easy player to say, hey, we're gonna throw you into a difficult position, and I know you're gonna end up swimming. And I think that's the fact that it's not just what he did statistically. It's not just the fact that I think he was their WAR leader,
Yep.
but it's the fact that they threw him into the most difficult situation, as you alluded to, of anybody on the ball club, and he still was their best player, and I think their most productive player, and also took on like a leadership role.
Yep.
Maybe not like vocally in the clubhouse, I have no idea, but he led on that field, and you could see it. He set the tone. I think he made Manny Machado feel like younger and excited and invigorated again. I think he invigorated Xander Bogaerts. Like, I think it transcends the box score and things like that. But yeah, I mean, we went into this year. I think that was one of the bold predictions that we made on the call up, was that he's going to make the team outright and be
Yep.
a good rookie. And he blasted through whatever expectations I think would have been remotely reasonable for him. And he's got a really awesome career ahead. He's got a head start on. I'm always thinking about. I always start compiling too early the
3,000 hits.
yeah, all that stuff. Exactly. The old CJ Abrams situation. But he's got himself on a really nice start here at just 21 years old to, have a ridiculous compilation of numbers if he can keep, staying healthy and keep going.
Yeah. We'd be remiss if we moved past the Padres without mentioning the other two outfielders. Fernando Tatis is back. Like, Fernando Tatis is a superstar. Acknowledge it. I know he missed some time, but dude, this guy is as good as anybody in baseball. I feel like I think that this guy, if I saw, Peter Apple's top 100 players and I
Mhm.
saw Fernando Tatis at 10 or 12, I'm not going to lose sleep over that. I'm not going to toss and turn there because I think he is that level of player. Profar. Like,
Incredible.
that wasn't anywhere close to any bingo card in America. Like, that
No,
isn't making a single retirement home. Jurickson
no,
Profar's 2024 season.
no,
But hey, here
absolutely
we
not.
are, and he's going to get a bag, and probably from San Diego.
You know what probably would have not been on, or probably definitely was not on very many bingo cards either, would be Kyle Higashioka doing what he did. And I think that's got to be the most underrated contributor in this situation because, I talk about the call up guy that I've definitely believed in for some time now is Luis Camposano. And
Yeah.
it hasn't looked good for him, man. Like, and we got to the point where they were either going to need to go make a trade or I don't know what, and end up getting Kyle Higashioka, standing out and doing what he did for them. 17 home runs in 84 games, more than fine behind the dish. That was absolutely massive for them. So I think he's got to be one of the most underrated unsung heroes. And same with Donovan Solano.
Yeah. So as it stands right now, Solano is a free agent, right? Higashioka is a free agent. Profar is a free agent. If you go to Fangraphs and you look at roster resource, the last three in that lineup is Tirso Ornelas in left,
Hmm.
Eggy Rosario, the DH, Luis Camposano, the catcher, and the four-man bench is Brent Sullivan, Trenton Brooks, Tyler Wade, Brandon Lockridge. They
Yeah,
got to fix
I'd be willing to wager it doesn't look like that.
that. I'd be willing to wager they signed four guys.
Yeah, yeah, or they'll make a trade or two. John Birdie, you are a San Diego
You're a
Padre,
Padre, no doubt.
which I actually
Birdie and
love that
Tyler
fit.
Wade on the same bench.
Yeah, I would. John Birdie's so much better.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it just doesn't look right now. And they're going to bring Profar back. I feel very, very confident with
Yes.
that. Where's their trust level with Campy at this point?
I think zero. I think they're either gonna bring Higashioka back, they're gonna do something else. I think Campy might be a change of scenery candidate.
I wanted to view Campy in a similar way to the way that I contextualize Ivan Herrera in my mind in St. Louis. I was like, oh, yeah, those are two guys that have been performing in AAA but haven't been given an opportunity in earnest at the big league level. I'm taking Ivan Herrera 10 times out of 10 over
And
Camposano at this point.
well, and you see what the Cardinals are doing, right?
You're
They're
right.
they're giving him an opportunity. Say this, and you don't know what's always going on in behind closed doors and all that. There's a lot more than what we're going to see on the stat sheet and what we're going to see on Fangraphs in terms of what makes a team optimistic and buying into X or Y player being their young catcher of the future. Ivan Herrera, I think, passes a lot of those things with flying colors. And I don't know if that's something that Luis Camposano has historically, been praised for, relative to his other skills.
Yeah. All right. Last question on the Padres. Ethan Salas and or Leo DeVries. Do they debut in 2025?
God, I hope not. I hope not. I think both can be special players, but please don't do that. That would be a disaster and a horrible idea. So I hope not. I say no.
Okay, so I was going to ask, like, you say you hope not. You hoping, like, what you think is smart and what'll actually happen, those might be two different things here.
Yeah, I say no.
Okay.
I think it's just such a ridiculous push there.
I think Salas plays. I think Salas gets a big league AB in 2025.
Is he gonna be the first guy to make his like big league debut before the age of 20 without producing a batting average above 200
Yes.
in his like minor league career?
I think who
I
was the
think it
last
probably is over 200 cumulatively, but last year it wasn't.
who were the last couple of guys to debut before 20? Was it Soto and Julio Urias?
I'm trying to think of another one. I before 20.
Did
And by the way, so career Ethan Salas career slash line in the minors 222, 304, 353.
was Profar? Was Wander Franco? Like I don't know. Like
Wander, I believe so.
I think Wander was 19. Julio was what 18. Then I think Soto was 19.
But that's a great trivia question, honestly.
Yeah, that is a good one.
I got some for you each year. The young Spire. Yuri Perez was just turned 20. Junior Caminero was 19 when he made his debut.
Wow. Okay.
Elvis Luciano.
Oh yeah, that's a weird one. It really
Very,
Blue Jays,
very,
right? In
very weird one.
2020.
Alberto Mondesi,
Uh,
Jurickson Profar, Bryce Harper, Mike Trout.
yeah.
That's a wild list of players.
Eclectic list, no doubt. So we'll see what happens there. I'm ready to give him an A, man. Like I thought this was a hell of a year from San Diego, and it feels like
Yeah.
any other division, any other DS matchup, they are going very, very far in this. So I'm firm A.
I was gonna say at least an A minus. I'm okay with an A. I
Cool.
think it was a great year for them.
Yep. D-backs, Giants, and Rockies to wrap. Before that, one more break. The best offense in baseball you didn't watch very often, I'm sure, the Arizona Diamondbacks. They were 89 and 73 this year. They were second in team OPS. They scored more runs as a team than any other in Major League Baseball. Their problem was run prevention. 27th in baseball in starter ERA, 25th in bullpen ERA. I was kind of surprised to see that number in terms of bullpen ERA because I was like, wait, they had an awesome post deadline from Puck. They had an
Mhm.
awesome year from Justin Martinez. I still really like Ginkle. They traded for Floro. They had a lot of runts on the back of that bullpen, and they had a lot of runts at the back of that rotation, man. Merrill Kelly missed time. Gallen was Gallen, but Jordan Montgomery, Brandon Pfaadt had a 4.7. Like my thing on Arizona in particular is they have answers at the front of the lineup in Carroll, in Ketel Marte, the front of the rotation in Gallen and Merrill Kelly, in the front of the bullpen with Justin Martinez and AJ Puck going into next year as well. The depth is where the questions lie. Like they
Yeah.
are a very thin baseball team.
Yeah, Dre Jamison coming back is going to be huge,
Huge.
and hopefully he's able to return to form. And and Ryan Nelson, right as he seemed like he was putting it all together, just getting hurt at that time really stinks. And I think with the way that the pitching situation went, yeah, Zach Allen was fine. You're not highlighting him as a problem, but with the rotation struggling, Zach Allen needed to throw like a Cy Young contender, and he threw like a pretty good pitcher. He threw to a 3.65. So I mean that's a big part of it too. But of course, you got to circle Jordan Montgomery as just the biggest disappointment possible. The fact that Eduardo Rodriguez only threw 50 innings, like that's a huge problem and disappointment. And yeah, I mean Merrill Kelly not being available, and that's kind of been one of the big things for him. One of the reasons why I think he's been so valuable over the last. I mean, he's been fantastic statistically, but 200 innings in 2022, 177 and 2/3 in 2023. It's 100 less innings this year. So they were in a tough spot pitching wise, and I think Jordan Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez, the two guys that you bring in to kind of put you over the top, anchoring you down,
Yeah.
I think ends up being the big problem there where I don't really think you can blame anything else.
No, I don't think so. And they need to fix that. Like I don't know what their plan is with Jordan Montgomery. Do you think they trade him? Like, do you think his
I, I,
next pitch is in a D-backs uniform or elsewhere?
I think very, very, very likely he's anywhere else. When you have an owner make those comments publicly the way that he has, like say, like, yeah, this was horrible signing and it's all my fault. You have Jordan Montgomery throwing a fit about calling like the jungle and whatever it is, and like Corey just doesn't like throwing in that stadium. Like, I just think there's so many reasons just for them to go their separate ways. And with the D-backs, seemingly on a little bit of a payroll constraint, I think it might make sense for them to dump that contract or as much of it that they can,
Yeah.
or do a bad contract swap, something along those lines. But it just seems like Jordan Montgomery, I would wager that he's not there.
How about Erod?
I think Erod makes sense to hold on to and just see what can happen.
Yeah, but like, what's the best case scenario of seeing what can happen? Like, we've been waiting on Erod. We've been waiting on the Erod we've been promised for a long time.
we got it in 23, kind of
Yeah. How many
like
innings?
2023. You got 152 innings, 152 and 2/3 at a 3.3 ERA, albeit in Detroit. Like, yeah, I agree with you. But even if the thing with Erod is like, I feel like you can count on him at worst being that 2021 Boston Erod, which is a 4.74 guy. They needed that. Like, they
Yeah.
needed somebody that was going to go out there and not get shellacked. And I just think that's someone that you got to give a shot to. Again, I think the big boost is going to be having Dre Jameson back, but I think you absolutely have to feel fine eating some of the money with Jordan Montgomery and dumping the contract. And I think there'll be plenty of teams willing to give him a change of scenery, especially with how expensive some of these arms are going to be on the open market.
Can you do me a favor and sit on the couch in the therapist's office, like you're laying down and you've got the neck pillow behind you, and just spew what you're feeling about Brandon Pfaadt as it stands on November 24th? Like I don't know how to contextualize Brandon Pfaadt. I don't know how to think about this guy.
FIP merchant probably a little bit. He's going to be one of those guys that I think you always look at the WAR and you look at the K to BB and whatever, and you're like, oh, like he's going to break out. He's really going to have a huge year this year. Or maybe you'd have some people that say like, oh, the year wasn't bad. I agree to an extent where like there's a lot of things that he does well, but a 4.71's a 4.71, man.
Yeah.
I do think there's a lot of value to the fact that he was able to throw a ton of innings this year and be consistently available. But yeah, he is so difficult to fully assess. And I think this is one of those spots where you got to challenge the new pitching coach that they've got there. And you've got to challenge the front office to help get this guy tweaked enough to be the pitcher that we know he can be. He's just turning 26 years old. You know how freaking talented he is. You don't back into 11, 10, 12 strikeout outings against
No.
good lineups. And we've seen him do that several times. He did it in terms of outings with 10 plus Ks. I think he did it 4 times last year and a ton of 8 plus K games. Like, you don't do that by accident. They need to figure out, him included in this equation, what does he need to do sequencing, pitch shape wise, whatever, to take that next step? Because he can't have another year of this inconsistency. I think it's too frustrating at this point. They need to figure out what works.
He and Detmers are very Spider-Man meme.
Yeah.
I think those two have so much stuff in their arsenal. They are very, very talented pitchers. And you talk about a guy spinning a 12 strikeout game, a 13 strikeout game, whatever, Fott and Detmers may put up. They have that in the tank. There's so much talent there. Detmers is the most talented pitcher in that Angels rotation. Fott is the second most talented pitcher in that Diamondbacks rotation behind Gallen. It's a matter of the organization and the right guy within that organization maximizing them. And is it a change of scenery thing? Not yet for Fott. Yes for
No.
Detmers, not yet for Fott.
Let's see
But
what Brian Kaplan can do.
sure,
Let's
because like Brent Strom couldn't do it. Having said that, I love that Pirates hire of Brent Strom. I think
mhm.
Strom working with Skeens and Jones and Keller and Bubba when he gets there, like all he needs to do is teach him the art form because there is nothing that needs to be tinkered with stuff wise.
No, absolutely not.
So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Offensively, I hope they do some sort of Jock Grichuk thing again. And it's probably not going to be Jock and Grichuk because they were both good in what they did, but that was the best funny platoon that we had in baseball. And that was a large part in them being the best offense in baseball by runs scored.
And it was a nasty platoon. I mean, Jock had one of his best, if not his best offensive season, and Grichuk had this career resurgence where, I mean, he's a guy that's going to have a lot of options. And he actually hit right on right better than ever, too. This offense was awesome. And, I think they're going to be able to piece it together one way or another. One of my favorite picks going into next year is a guy that I like, don't sleep on him, is Pavin Smith. I
Yeah.
actually think that he's going to get a prominent role here and play a lot. And I like a lot of the batted ball markers with him. I think Pavin Smith's a guy that can end up, picking up a little bit where some other guys left off. And, hopefully Alec Thomas being available and maybe he can step up and him and Jake McCarthy can just keep taking turns on who's good and who's not. But
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have too much worry about this offense even going into next year with the impending departure of Christian Walker and Jock Peterson. I still think they're going to continue to rake. And remember, they were able to do this overcoming some putrid first halves. And I think that's ultimately why they didn't make the playoffs. So
Yeah.
maybe do this is probably not the right word because they came up a little short, but they're able to salvage the season, turn in 89 wins, where that's going to get you to the playoffs a majority of years nowadays. When, I mean, you have your superstar playing like one of the worst qualified hitters in baseball in Corbin Carroll, but you had a Eugenio Suarez stinking it up in the first half of the year. You had Lourdes Gurriel, I think, struggling through the first half of the year. So, I mean, to do what they did down the stretch, I think you got to feel good and feel like, okay, Corbin's back. Gino was awesome by the time you finish the season. Gino was spectacular
Yeah.
overall. Like they're going to be in a pretty good spot going into next season. And remember, Moreno missed a lot of time too.
Yeah. And he didn't look right when he was on the field either.
No,
Ketel Marte was the saving grace for 162 games. I know he missed a little bit of time with a hammy, but Ketel Marte being Ketel Marte was so
superstar.
huge for them and like worthy of being an MVP finalist. I know that he wasn't one, but he,
Mm-hmm.
was certainly worthy of that.
If he didn't get hurt, I think he absolutely was even more like you could really make that strong argument. 136 games makes it hard, but when he was on the field, he was as good as anybody.
Yep. Um, where do you sit here? Because 89 wins is like 89 wins. I immediately go to B, but they are the reigning runner up.
Mm-hmm.
And this staff was really bad.
Yeah.
Like I go to C plus, I guess, maybe C.
This was probably the best offense in baseball, though, right?
Yeah, I
Like
know.
statistically,
But they
I
didn't make the
I lean
playoffs.
B minus is too generous.
No, I agree with you because the best offense in baseball should be getting a B plus. But like based on where our expectations were coming into this year, it's like we fully expect them to be back in the hunt for that. But they also just kind of like backed their way into the postseason in 23 anyways.
And that's the thing. They won 89 games. Like that. That's what makes it hard for me because it wasn't like they were they won 84 games the year before. Like when they make the run, they won 84 games. They improved upon their regular season record. I just think the bar was set so much higher. And the guys that they acquired to kind of push them over the top, presumably, weighed them down, if anything. So aside from Jock, obviously, I got to go with a B. I feel good about a B. I think we got to get out of the C range at least. I'd settle on a B minus.
Okay,
But
I'm fine with B minus. I'm
I
not
mean,
fine
like
with B.
they won more games than the Astros.
Yeah, dude.
Like that's what you can only control that, especially with less and less games being so concentrated against your division. Less is in your control
Yeah.
outside of just winning a total amount of games, and that's why I feel like 89 is a lot of wins. It's the same amount as the Braves, the same amount as the Mets.
82.9%, like the highest B minus that you can get without it being a B.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Okay. 82.9% for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Two more teams, the Giants and the Rockies. Let's start with San Francisco. The Giants this year, they were under 500, 80 and 82. They were 19th in team OPS. They were 17th in runs scored. They were 18th in starter ERA. They were 15th in bullpen ERA. That's a lot of things in the mid teens. They were the epitome of average this year, and they were 2 games under 500. That is average. Are you playing NCAA football 25 or no?
Not much. I was when it came out of the gate, and then not as much now.
So were you doing the dynasty thing or no?
No, I just I couldn't do that because I knew I would get sucked into a vortex.
Okay, fair. So I started as the Ball State OC. Never forget your roots. And now year 2 at Notre Dame, by the way. But the way that I like view the San Francisco Giants is they're trying to recruit like a 5-star program when in reality they're like a 3-star program right now. Like they're
At this
shooting
point, yeah.
for they're spending on like all these top 10 recruits, and reality is like they should be targeting the mid 200s. And again, like I'll tie it back to baseball now. They've been in the hunt for all these marquee free agents, and they want to act like a major market. They want to act like a contender, but nobody's coming. And like this is what they can do with that roster, and this is what they can do with that farm system because the farm system is not that good. Like they are a mid-tier organization right now, and like I'm confident that they are going to spend their way out of stuck.
Yeah,
Is it going to happen this winter?
I think so. I do think they're going to spend again. I think they're very quick to extend Chapman to just make it clear that they can just focus on other things. But I mean, they got to make this team better for sure because I, I think a lot of things went right for them this year. Obviously, losing Jung Hoo Lee stunk, and that really hurt. But I mean, you got the 100th percentile outcome of Elliot Ramos this season. He had become pretty much a non-prospect in a lot of ways, where just people were just I was fully checked out on him really becoming anything more than a part-time player. I mean, Tyler Fitzgerald, that's the 100th percentile outcome for sure. So you get those two guys who ends up being two of your better position players, like period. I mean, Tyler Fitzgerald, I believe, was second in WAR and on that team, and then Elliot Ramos was probably third. So like that's a huge part of this whole thing. And those are guys that came out of essentially nowhere. And no way the Giants were banking on those guys doing much going into the season. Sure, they may have been banking on more from Marco Luciano. I wouldn't have been. And I definitely would have been banking on more from Luis Mato. So those situations are unfortunate. You can kind of say maybe they offset each other a little bit. But I mean, this was a team that, even with the signings, I think the expectation was for them to flirt with 500, and that's exactly what they did. And Blake Snell with the delay, didn't get to jump out and throw as many innings as you would have wanted. But when he was available, he was obviously fantastic. I think this was the easiest C overall that we can give out. It was just status quo, and things ended up evening out, and they were kind of what we thought they were.
It was just average. And you mentioned like some of these guys putting together their 100th percentile outcome. A lot of guys put together like their 30th percentile outcome. Like Conforto being a 1.5 win player, like, okay, whatever.
Maybe
What
that
does
was
this
kind
do?
of the 50th percentile at this point. He finished strong too. And so that's the thing is like a lot of his best baseball came when they were already kind of out of it.
Yeah. I mean, like this offense as a whole wasn't that bad, but like Pat Bailey did exactly what he was expected to do. Like, I hope that he's going to level up offensively. He's a platinum glove level defender.
Yeah.
Like
They had one player with an OPS over. I know it's a tough place to hit, but they had one player with an OPS over 800, and that was Tyler Fitzgerald in 96 games.
they had a lot of guys, I will say, in the high 700s though. Like
Yeah,
they had a
that is
lot of
true.
110 OPS plus guys.
That is true. And so that does help even it out. But like, man, I need a little more star power out here, please.
I think,
On the
yeah,
offensive side for sure.
I'm with you. I do think pitching was kind of where you saw the mediocrity here, and it was positive and negative canceling each other out. Like Logan Webb did what Logan Webb was supposed to do. He led the National League in innings. He was at 204 and 2/3 at a 3.47. Kyle Harrison at a 4.5 at a 4.6. Jordan Hicks was so good at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year, all of a sudden he's got a 4.1. Snell
Well,
was awesome, but Snell was terrible, and he missed some time at the beginning of the year. Robbie Ray was encouraging at the end of the year, but what does
yeah,
encouraging look like? Not much.
I actually like where Ray's at. I think that was a great get for them. The swing and miss was there. He is not going to get cooked by the long ball. I think the Giants are in a better spot going into next year, especially if they're able to either retain Snell or allocate that towards getting another impactful arm.
Yeah.
They got some answers there, but yeah, from a starting pitching perspective overall, it definitely was um, not the best outcome. I think it was a fun experiment with Hicks, but it was kind of what we were afraid of, right? Off an injured reliever. Yes, it looks like, okay, the thought was there and it was a successful thought exercise where, yes, he's an effective starter. But that wasn't the big issue. I think the big issue was, can this guy sustain the workload? And as we clearly saw, he couldn't. And it felt like he threw way more innings than 109 and 2/3 because uh, how much he was laboring down the stretch. And Kyle Harrison, like, no, probably top of the list of names I've gotten so much flack for not ranking high and top pro. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's got to be better than that in that state. Like
Has to.
you're playing in that ballpark. Like your biggest issue is the long ball, and he still got killed by the long ball. So it's got to be better from Kyle Harrison if they're going to do anything because you know what Webb's going to do. Like you said, I think they're going to go get another impactful arm. Robbie Ray helps a ton,
Yeah.
but who's the 4-5? Like they need to see some more from Kyle Harrison.
Yeah, and I think Birdsong can progress to that. Like the funny thing is,
Birdsong is a great breakout guy for next year too. I'm glad you mentioned him, and he's probably going to grab that. He might end up leaping Kyle Harrison, to be honest.
he's throwing that tread kick change thing, and
Yeah,
that kick change is crazy right now. It is all the rage. The young kids are the youths are talking about it in baseball right now. But like, what got me about the 24 Giants is Kyle Harrison has an endearing quality, and that is the four seam fastball, but it resulted in a 4.6 ERA. Hayden Birdsong has an endearing quality. It's that kick change. It resulted in a 4.75 in 72 innings. Mason Black has an endearing quality. It's the pitchability and the ability to command the zone in the upper levels of the minor leagues. And then he gives you 36 innings at a 6.5 ERA. Like
yeah.
I love it in theory, but the execution was just not there in 2024. And I'm excited to see what it looks like in 25 because they're going to sign a starting pitcher. They are still going to need to piecemeal together a five spot.
I've pounded the pavement quite a bit about the San Francisco Giants player development and just R&D in general, and I think we're seeing it through the minor leagues, no doubt about it. But I think we're also seeing it matriculate, up to the big leagues where you see the flashes of talent, but it's just not totally being converted.
Yeah. Buster Posey being in the driver's seat should help.
Hmm.
Do you see Randy Wynn is now a member of that front office?
That's crazy.
It's funny.
That's
Like
crazy. It's a fun
we're
name,
back to this.
or it's a fun name.
Yeah, get back to it. So, yeah, I think easiest C that you could possibly hand out here, and excited to see how they attack this offseason because I do think they're going to try and spend their way out of this C 500 stuck mediocrity label.
Yep.
Last and unfortunately least is the Colorado Rockies. Our Colorado Rockies were 61 and 101. They were 15th in team OPS. Team OPS is going to be very misleading. They were 29th in WRC plus. Tells you the Coors effect. They were 19th in runs scored. They were 30th in starter ERA. They were 30th in bullpen ERA. Tough. You're never going to
I
find
don't.
guys.
Those numbers are wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think those are right. That doesn't check out to me.
I mean,
Uh,
they have fun arms in Hartford. There were zero fun
kind of.
arms in
Yeah.
Colorado.
Yeah. I mean, there's few teams where I would just say like, fuck it. Let's just see what these minor league arms can do. If they get shellacked for you, I wouldn't even care. Like,
Yeah.
just let's see what they can do. Because instead of just rolling out some guys that are just very obviously not going to do anything, I want to see what Chase Dolander can do this year, and he'll get a shot for sure. But I
Yeah.
want to see even a Carson Palmquist. I want to see a Sean Sullivan. I want to see all these guys this coming season. Hopefully, with the trimming of Cal Quantrill and things like that, like maybe that's something that they'll lean into a little bit more. But yeah, I just want to see the pitching get younger here. They do finally have some fun arms. So like let's just see them push those guys a little bit more quickly.
I wonder like what the end of 2025 rotation looks like, assuming full health. Marquez will be back. Marquez is a Colorado Rocky. Like this is a good guy to have as your jersey seller and your number one in your rotation. Is it going to be Marquez, Senzatella, Dolander, Sullivan, Palmquist? I
Could be.
guess.
I could be. I mean, and and one of those funky lefties doesn't work, the rotation, you can throw him into the bullpen. So, I mean, the Rockies pitching situation is definitely getting a lot better. And I mean, they've been selling out for it by drafting as many arms as possible and the funkiest arms they can. But it's definitely going to be more fun and a lot better. I think within the next calendar year.
Yeah. It is. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do on the pitching side. Like, I'm just, with all due respect to Ryan Feltner, I'm really tired of seeing Ryan Feltner start.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
and I think Ryan Feltner would prefer to pitch elsewhere, and I think that he could get an opportunity elsewhere because he shows like these flashes in the pan that are unbelievable from Feltner, and we saw a couple of those this year. But yeah, I'd like to see them get young. Congrats to Ezekiel Tovar on getting an MVP vote. I don't know if
Wait,
he
someone
would.
threw him in there?
Yeah, he made a ballot.
What a joke. Like, why?
I don't know because he
Uh,
he had a better year, but also like welcome to voting, welcome
I
to
love
award voting.
Tovar, but like, what are we doing? Tovar
What
is
are we
going to be
doing?
great. Like, a sneaky, he's like the NBA effect guy. I don't think people realize he's still only 22 years old.
Yeah,
Uh, I mean, again, I'm excited for Amador to actually have a normal situation up there. Nolan Jones, I really think it was just a lost year. He was
I
hurt for
think
the
so.
start of it, and then just didn't look right when he was on the field. It's hard to believe that what he did the year before would be a fluke. I think he clearly showed that he can hit the ball and has that a great approach overall. They brought back Jacob Stallings,
Yeah.
so clearly like something clicked for him there, and that's fine. Trivia question for you:
Okay.
who led the Rockies of all pitchers, minimum 20 innings? Who led the Rockies in ERA and within like, zero point 0.3 of it? What was that ERA?
I can't even give you a good guess on who led them in ERA, but I'll say that their leading ERA was a 3.81.
Victor Vodnik with a 4.28.
Come on, man.
Just like figure something out, man. I understand it's really hard to throw out there, but like, come on. To
Build a
me, like this is
dome.
like you're not even trying.
That's crazy. Yeah, Ezekiel Tovar, 19th in MVP voting. He'll have that forever. So I think he got 1/10th place vote.
Good for
Um,
him.
that's crazy to think about, man.
Opposing hitters against the Rockies. I understand Coors is a tough place to pitch.
Yeah,
Opposing hitters, 285, 354, 468 this year. It's a great player. That's a
that's
really
an
good player.
all-star.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a better year from a slash line perspective, from an OPS perspective. That is a better season, I believe, than what Anthony Santander had.
Dude.
Santander, I don't think his OPS was it north of 823?
I
I
don't
don't
think so.
think so.
I think he was high
814.
700s.
814.
814.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Silver lining.
D D
Yeah.
minus. D minus.
Yeah, I mean D minus, like it's the Rockies. What else are you going to expect? I will say silver lining that keeps them away from the F is they have now two stars. Like Tovar progressing the way he
Mhm.
did and the Brenton Doyle breakout, they have
Oh
two
my
guys that
gosh.
they're going to build around. Brenton Doyle was, I think, one of the breakouts of the Major League Baseball season in 2024. And I consider that guy a star and maybe a top five center fielder in baseball going to next year.
Especially out there, when you have a guy that can cover more ground than anybody in the most cavernous outfield, and then the power that he provides, he's a 30-30 threat. If he can hit a few more home runs, he's a special talent. So I do think that's huge. You got to lock that guy up immediately. You have two elite defenders up the middle who are young, provide power, and are speedy and fun like that. That's definitely a great wrinkle. And they had a couple arms come up late in the year that I do think have potential to actually be sustainably solid relievers for them, which are hard to find. Seth Alverson was throwing absolute
Yeah.
fuzz. Luis Peralta was pretty nasty. Like they definitely had some pieces. But yeah, it's got to be a D minus.
Yeah. I think so. D minus, settle on it. They lost 101 games. Like,
Yeah.
has to be.
Yeah.
So that is your season in review for all 30 Major League Baseball teams. Guess what starts on Wednesday, on Blackout Wednesday? It's a nice start. It's like, hey, put it on at the pregame. Why not? Have some fun.
Yeah. Put it be the
Playing GM.
lamest guy at the party.
Yeah, but like pop one AirPod in, it's like, oh, yeah, just work stuff. Don't worry about it. You and Peter are going to play GM for the Diamondbacks and the Braves, I think.
Okay.
That's a great start.
I like that. That's going to be really fun. Braves are going to be
Sched
creative this year.
Yeah, scheduling note, no show on Friday because that would mean a Thanksgiving record, and it's turkey time and football time. I think the Bears are going to be subjected to that again on Thursday, which sucks. But we will be back continuing all the playing GM stuff next week. We'll start on Wednesday. Every link you need is in the episode description. You got anything else or no?
I believe Max Stassi on a minor league deal to I think this would be a fun one. Really, really, this is big news, I think, here, right? Stassi on a minor league deal to the Giants. Enjoy that
Wow.
tidbit, folks. I don't think that's out yet.
Wow. He's
So
going to
it's
be
what you
a
tune into the Just Baseball show for.
no doubt, he's going to be a good river cat. He's going to need to vacate his locker, though, for the A's to come in, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Sutter Health Park.
Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Remember when he signed like a 5 year deal?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
People forget. All right, guys. We'll talk to you on Wednesday.